And so I thought it would be a great place to start. When you think of the industrial metaverse, what does it mean to you, Minister?
Thanks, Matt. And let me kick off by establishing one thing first. The current 2D world of the digital world that we live in today is not fit for purpose in the 21st century. And I'll share with you a story from neuroscience to prove it, since we have Siemens Healthcare here with us on the panel. There was a patient by the name of Elliot. He used to be a lawyer. And his doctor, Antonio Damasio, extracted a tumor from the right side of his brain. And surprisingly, post the surgery, he was not capable to make decisions anymore, because it is emotions that drive action, not logic that drives thinking. And this is why the 2D world did not work at the time of remote education, remote work. And this is why you have companies like Salesforce.com, JP Morgan calling people back into the office. Because it's not only killing productivity, I would presume it's killing the next generation leaders. We all love it in a meeting when you nudge your colleague to make sure that you tap him on the back when he's doing a great job. Or another colleague that is doing a fantastic presentation and you give her 2 thumbs up or feedback post that session. This is why genuinely I'm a big advocate of the metaverse, that it's going to be the next wave of how immersive experiences work for consumers, enterprises, and the industry.
Minister, you're chairman of NEOM's company focused on future technologies, including the metaverse. What is it that you see as the greatest potential, and can you just take me behind the scenes a little bit behind Saudi Arabia's investment in the metaverse more generally?
So let me share with you examples from Ericsson Healthcare and Magic Leap, as we have the great pleasure of collaborating with some of the biggest innovators in this space. On 5G, the kingdom celebrates with Ericsson one of the fastest 5G deployment. And as a matter of fact, in terms of spectrum allocation, the kingdom today ranks #1 in terms of spectrum allocated for the industrial internet, the industrial 5G, and subsequently the metaverse, which is all important about the latency that is required to enable those use cases. When it comes to NEOM, I'll share with you about NEOM and about the Red Sea project. And the chairman, the Crown Prince, he has a saying, prove it to me in a digital twin first. So prove it to me in the metaverse first. So we promised him during the Red Sea project that we're going to deliver 0 waste to landfill. And he was able to show it to me on the design phase, the build phase, the optimization phase. And we were able to collaborate with those top innovators to showcase it. Within NEOM, we made a promise that we're going to preserve 95% of the environment, and we were able to do that. Let me segue into Aramco and SABIC, because they actually have the showcase here in Davos. They have a center called ICE, which is Innovation for the Circular Economy. And we were able to leverage the digital twins, the metaverses, to produce the lowest carbon intensity when it comes to our energy production, but also prevent flaring with an IoT implementation. Last but not least, with Magic Leap, we're training our folks to improve retention of these employees as they go into those energy environments and be able to deploy solar and wind in a much faster and practical way.
Fascinating. How are you tackling this? It sounds like the Crown Prince is an early adopter, one of the folks that we've been talking about.
Big time.
Yes, but beyond that, how are you tackling what's been described in terms of getting people comfortable with using this, changing their habits somewhat?
I completely agree with what was shared. It's about the bias, it's about the interoperability, and it's about making sure that we don't have any red taping or red flagging. Let's talk about the bias. Today, if you just search on your typical search engine, beautiful hair and not so beautiful hair, you'll find 2 ethnic groups, and that's completely not acceptable. We're all excited about OpenAI and ChatGPT. There's a new tool called DALL-E 2, which is all about text to imagery. And again, bias, if you say beautiful eye, it will show you 1 shade of color. Let me give you a hint, it's not mine. Secondly, when you're talking about red flagging and red taping, and I want to acknowledge here on the stage, Microsoft, they did the right thing, but they did it on their own, and that's why we need a collective effort. And I remember you spoke about His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. we were very fortunate during the G20 2020, the toughest year that humanity have seen under his leadership, to drive consensus on the OECD principles for trustworthy AI, how it should be robust, inclusive, human-centered, with security, with accountability. So this is one clear example of Microsoft taking accountability for Minecraft when they stopped their blockchain engine because it was driving the wrong behavior. Last but not least, you talk about interoperability. The theme this year at WEF is a new system for cooperation and collaboration in this fragmented world. We have so much polarization in the analog world. Let's make sure that we don't have it in the digital world, and definitely not in the metaverse.
So just to build on that then, you have a great perspective, having been in the private sector, now in government. What part does cooperation between public and private, between regulatory bodies, between the education system, what does that look like? What does it have to look like, do you think?
The most beautiful thing that I have seen is drawing parallels from success stories that we've had in fintech, in green tech, and those successful stories. It started with one principle: innovate then regulate. Sandboxes. We need right now, and we're very happy and fortunate that we have launched a number of sandboxes with Aramco, with SABIC, and it's showcased today at WEF, and with NEOM, in how we're bringing academia, innovators, policymakers, and regulators into one sandbox to make sure that it's a safe environment for us to innovate in healthcare, with Ericsson and with Magic Leap. So that's the first principle. Secondly, let's start with guiding principles. This is a low regulatory environment to begin with, but let's not make sure that we have some guiding principle on at least what is right and what is wrong. Let's move a little bit from the red taping to red carpet when it comes to the metaverse. And last but not least is success breeds success. As we celebrate what we have done with Aramco in their training and their retention, with SABIC and how we have simulated wind turbines and PV solar panels with better efficiency, and with NEOM and Red Sea projects preserving the environment and safeguarding the planet. So it's moving from those pilots to prototypes to success and scaling them up.
Interesting. Minister, I'd be interested to get your perspective. You work with Magic Leap, with Microsoft, but what does it look like for you in this sense?
I think this is a global headwind. I mean, WEF says that there's 4 million cybersecurity professionals that we need yesterday and 4 million coders. But I think we were able to shift that headwind to a tailwind in partnership with you and with you. So the kingdom in the past 5 years, we've jumped as a tech force from 150,000 tech force to 340,000. Just to put this in context, the Silicon Valley has 384,000, but they achieved that in 50 years. So that shows you the rate of speed and change that is happening in collaboration with you. But what's more importantly is the women inclusion story. And I would argue that this is the most audacious women empowerment and inclusion story in the 21st century. We have jumped from 7% women empowerment in tech and STEM to 32%, surpassing the EU average, G20 average, and even the Silicon Valley average. And it's not a surprise that in terms of women founders, the kingdom today globally ranks #1. So we're doubling down on talent and technology in the industrial metaverse.
Just very quickly, how on earth do you do that? It's a remarkable achievement, but I'm curious.
5 years ago, the journey started with Prince Mohammed bin Salman Misk Foundation, in which they have ramped up what we call the Million Lives program, in which we have touched 1 million women and youth, not only in the kingdom, but in the region. And we started with Microsoft. Peggy at that time was at Microsoft. We started right now with Magic Leap and with Siemens and with Ericsson. And that created a movement and a momentum, and a tipping point happened. And this WEF, we announced with IBM, with Coursera, reskilling and upskilling, with IBM 100,000 folks, and with Coursera 250,000 folks. And we intend, under a new organization that we recently announced called the Digital Cooperation Organization, to open up that toolbox to more than 30 nations to be able to create one of the largest upskilling and reskilling movement in the digital economy.